In the heart of the Middle East, surrounded by nations that once vowed to destroy it, lies a country barely the size of New Jersey, a nation born from ashes, trauma, and desperation. Yet today, that nation is one of the most advanced and powerful military states on Earth. This is the story of Israel. But this story isn't just about tanks and jets. It's about survival, about innovation born from fear and strength forged in isolation. Because unlike most modern states, Israel didn't get time to breathe after independence. It was thrust into war the moment it was born. In 1948, the world watched as a newly declared state faced an immediate invasion by 5 Arab nations. Israel had no proper army, no air force, no tanks, just scattered militias, World War II leftovers, and a population of survivors. Holocaust survivors, refugees, people who had already lost everything, now being asked to fight again. This time for a home they had just begun to claim, and somehow they won. It was not a miracle. It was desperation, guerrilla tactics, and a population willing to die because they had already seen what happens when they daren't fight back. That war, the first of many, changed everything. Israel realized it would never have the luxury of peace. It's not in that region, not with those borders, not with that history. So, it adapted. Fast. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, was born not just as a military, but as a culture. Military service became mandatory. Training became ruthless, and strategy, ruthlessly effective. They studied their enemies, learned how to outmaneuver larger forces. They didn't just defend their borders, they reshaped them. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel launched a preemptive strike, so calculated, so fast, that within hours, it destroyed the air forces of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, all on the ground. In 6 days, Israel tripled its territory, and the world began to take notice. But this wasn't just brute force. Israel understood something most countries didn't at the time. Wars of the future would be fought with intelligence and technology. So while others bought weapons, Israel started building them in the 1970s. With the US as a shaky ally and surrounded by enemies, Israel couldn't rely on imports. So it created its own defense industry, developed one of the world's most advanced tanks, the Merkava. It began designing aircraft, missiles, drones, and most importantly, surveillance systems. Because in Israel, information was survival. The Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, became one of the most feared in the world. Not because of brutality, though it wasn't always clean, but because of precision. Covert operations, assassinations of terrorist masterminds, extraction of Nazi war criminals. Israel began to show the world that it could not only defend itself, it could strike first. Strike fast, and vanish into the shadows. But the real turning point, it wasn't war, it was technology. As Silicon Valley was rising in the US, something similar was quietly happening in Tel Aviv. Israel began investing in cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, and military startups. Military intelligence units like Unit 8200 became training grounds for future tech CEOs. Veterans left the IDF and launched cybersecurity companies, drone manufacturers, surveillance software startups, all blending war experience with high-tech innovation. Today, Israeli defense exports are among the highest per capita in the world, countries across the globe, including former adversaries. Now by Israeli-made weapons, drones, and software. The Iron Dome missile defense system, which intercepts rockets mid-air, has become legendary. It's not science fiction, it's real, and it works. But why did all this happen? Why did Israel become not just a military state, but a military innovator? The answer is simple. It had no choice. Israel has lived under the shadow of annihilation since its first day. Every war, every missile, every terrorist attack reinforced one lesson. Survival isn't enough. Dominance is necessary. So Israel invested in defense, not as a budget item, but as a national identity. This tiny country turned its trauma into strategy, its fear into firepower, and its isolation into innovation. But the story doesn't end here. Because while Israel stands strong militarily, it now faces a new battlefield, one without borders. where enemies are invisible and wars are waged with data, ideology, and shifting alliances. But for all of Israel's military brilliance and technological dominance, power in the 21st century looks different. Enemies are no longer just on maps. They're in cyberspace, in narratives, in ideologies that travel faster than bullets. And Israel knows this better than most. In recent years, the battlefield has shifted from the deserts and borders to computer servers and encrypted chats. Cyber warfare has become the new front line, and Israel, once again, is not just defending, it's leading. Unit 8200, the secretive military intelligence unit, is now considered one of the most advanced cyber forces in the world. Its alumni have founded some of the most successful cybersecurity companies globally, and their tools are used in governments, banks, and critical infrastructure. But this cyber dominance hasn't come without controversy. The Pegasus spyware, developed by the Israeli firm NSO Group, made global headlines when it was allegedly used by governments to spy on journalists, dissidents, and politicians. Suddenly, the world saw what Israeli cyber power really looked like: efficient, visible, and at times morally ambiguous. The truth is, Israel's military power has always lived in this gray zone, admired by allies, feared by enemies, and constantly questioned by human rights groups. Because alongside the Iron Dome and counterterrorism brilliance lies another harsh reality: a decades-long conflict with the Palestinians. Too many Israelis, the military is a shield against endless rocket fire, suicide bombings, and existential threats. Too many Palestinians, that same military, represents occupation, checkpoints, surveillance, and a loss of dignity. This conflict, more than any other, has shaped the evolution of Israel's defense strategy. Urban warfare, intelligence networks inside refugee camps, drones that hover over entire neighborhoods, facial recognition systems that catalog entire populations. Every threat has led to a response, and every response has led to more questions. So how does a country maintain its military edge while walking the tightrope of international scrutiny? Israel's answer: silence and deterrence. It rarely confirms or denies its military operations. It doesn't brag about its nuclear arsenal, but the world knows it exists. Israel is believed to have between 80 to 400 nuclear warheads, making it the only nuclear power in the Middle East. Yet it's never officially tested or declared them. It doesn't need to, because power, in Israel's case, often lies in ambiguity. This doctrine, known as strategic opacity, is one of the reasons Israel is feared. Enemies never know exactly how far Israel is willing to go, but history suggests it will go as far as necessary. Remember the 1981 airstrike on Iraq's Assyric nuclear reactor? Israel destroyed the facility in a daring preemptive strike. Years later, it reportedly did the same in Syria. No warning, no negotiations, just action. But these aren't just tales of heroism, they're warnings. Israel has made it clear it will not allow existential threats to grow unchecked. And now, a new one is rising: Iran. The growing tensions between Israel and Iran have turned much of the region into a chessboard of espionage, proxy wars, and sabotage. Israel accuses Iran of seeking nuclear weapons and funding terror groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran, in turn, views Israel as a Western outpost and regional aggressor. Behind the scenes, assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists, mysterious explosions at military facilities, and cyber attacks on infrastructure hint at a shadow war already underway. And while Iran grows closer to Russia and China, Israel deepens its quiet ties with Gulf nations, especially after the historic Abraham Accords, which normalized relations with the UAE and Bahrain. Suddenly, old enemies are becoming allies, not out of love, but out of mutual fear of a rising Iran. This new Middle East is complicated, and Israel is maneuvering through it with the precision of a military veteran. But with all its power, Israel faces a deeper question: can it remain a fortress without becoming a prison? Critics argue that a state built on perpetual security fears risks becoming consumed by them. That high-tech walls can trap not only enemies, but also the nation behind them. That intelligence supremacy and drone dominance can't substitute for long-term peace. And yet inside Israel, the mood is often one of paradox. A nation proud of its strength, but haunted by its fragility. A society where children are taught battlefield tactics in school and then start tech companies in their 20s. Where military service is a rite of passage and trauma is part of the national DNA, Israel doesn't just train soldiers, it forges survivors. Every war, every siren, every burial has deepened the country's resolve to never be defenseless again. And so it builds, and it builds, and it builds, not just weapons, but influence. Today, Israeli-made defense tech is being sold to Europe, Asia, Africa, and even countries that once refused to acknowledge its existence, from missile defense systems in India, to drone technology in Eastern Europe, to cyber intelligence tools in South America. Israel has turned its military into an empire of exports. And yet, beneath this power lies a fundamental truth. Israel's rise was never just about might. It was about memory. The memory of genocide. The memory of exile. The memory of being powerless in a hostile world. It vowed, never again. And that vow, more than any policy or strategy, has shaped its military mind. Because in Israel, power is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. So as new threats emerge, as old alliances shift, and as the battlefield continues to evolve, Israel will do what it's always done: adapt, innovate, survive. Because for Israel, power isn't just about winning wars, it's about making sure there's still a country left to come home to when the war ends.